lardon, right? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And I cooked it really slow, so the bacon would crisp, but I'd get a little oil off of it. So see, I have some fat. That's important. Because I want something to cook on.
Get a little closer.
So I gotta have, if you cook it too high, you're gonna end up crisping up the bacon with no fat. So you need to cook it nice and slow. And right now, I'm just heating this up. Y'all, wait till you taste this cabbage. I told you yesterday, you're gonna slap somebody.
Sorry, John.
Just gonna bake it, bake it.
I'm gonna wash my hands.
I need cheese like that.
This is like fried bacon, not just burned bacon on the hamburger.
So you can burn my bacon. You can burn the bacon. Burn the bacon. Then we found a movie.
Turn the fire down. Turn the fire down.
Turn the fire
Turn the fire down. Why are y'all messing with my bacon?
So you can burn the bacon.
You gonna burn the
Very
bacon.
worried
I'm not
about
burning bacon.
We don't want it to
You won't
burn.
burn it.
I'm not gonna burn that bacon. Still my first rodeo.
There you go.
Okay, so once I heat that up, I'm gonna add my onions. And this may be a little bit different than your recipe calls for, but I made this last week. This is one of my favorites. I'm telling you. Bacon and onions, right? How is that? Not good.
Cabbage today.
So I just want those to get kind of translucent. I don't want them to brown that much. Just kind of translucent. So I turn down my heat, and while I do that, I'm going to show you how I want you to cut the cabbage. Alright, so a half a cabbage is fine for one serving. We have like 8 heads in there, half a cabbage is beautiful. So I cut it in half, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to cut this core out. So I'm going to cut it in a triangle, like that, to get as much of that core out as I can. Okay. Missed a little. Alright. Peel those outer leaves off. And then what you want to do to this is what I call chiffonade. And that's a fine cut, like you would for coleslaw. Okay, so not huge pieces like you would do green cabbage. And notice that I'm shifting this around so that I have more control. And I'm not working up way high. So I just keep turning it. Reads really weird. I think it's really funny. It says add the apples and stop. No, add the apples, stop, and spices tied in the cheesecloth. Right? You can't put stop in cheesecloth. Okay? It means add the apples, stop, and spices tied in the cheesecloth. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. Like these recipes, you gotta kind of understand them before you can. And I'm adding my apples now because I'm trying to add layers of flavor why wouldn't I soften my apples in that onion fat, bacon fat, before I added my liquid? Okay, you don't have to. You can do exactly as the recipe says. In the end, those three things are all I care.
Chef, what about the sugar?
I'm gonna do that in just a second. So I'm gonna keep cutting my cabbage. And as I said, you see how much cabbage this is producing. And you know that with a leafy green, it's gonna cook down to almost nothing. So, you know, add more than you think, but a half a head of cabbage is a lot of cabbage. Brown in the skillet and serve a piece of sausage and some beautiful, rich braised cabbage. So I don't mess around with Scooby snacks. When I say Scooby, run. I'm telling you.
The other guy at work, they can sound like Scooby-Doo. Hilarious.
This is, I had this girl one time, and I've been doing Scooby snacks as long as I've been years. And so this girl, she took her family to Disney World, and they got a Scooby-Doo chef, a Scooby-Doo with a chef hat on. And she brought it in, and I was like, who's gonna eat this? She was like, my son will not sleep without this. So, but it was so, I was like, oh my God, Scooby snacks.
So what kind of sausage is that again?
It is pork sausage, and it's from the Belleville Meat Market, which is in between Houston and Austin, like Brenham, where Bluebell is from, in between Houston and Austin. I had a former student who went down there last week, and she brought me back some sausage. So I'm gonna cut that up, fry it up. It's awesome. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna add a little brown sugar.
Just a little. Just a little bit. Okay.
You can always adjust later. Like if it's too sweet, what do you add to balance the sweet? What's the opposite?
Vinegar.
Acid.
Vinegar.
And in this case would be vinegar.
So on our recipe where it says sugar, it's going to be brown sugar.
You can use regular sugar, you can use maple syrup, you can use dextrose, you can use anything for sweet.
What about molasses?
Molasses. And so once that kind of melts and forms a caramel, you see that? Then I'm going to add my cabbage. So this is a braise. And as I told you yesterday, a braise is a braise is a braise. We started off dry. We added our ingredients and we browned them. And then we're going to add our main ingredient and we're going to put liquid in it, cover it, and let it go. It's a combination cooking method. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of toss this up and make sure that all that apple or brown sugar gets tossed with all this cabbage.
So could you replace, since you added sugar, could you replace the sour apples with washing the red apples?
Any kind of apple will do. I like green apples because they're a little firmer and they're a little more tart. They hold up better to cooking. So this has probably been cooking for 50 years, probably. And the reason it's still so good is because I treat it with respect. I don't even have to season it. It is non-stick. It is this, and I leave this here. And on the weekends, sometimes I wish that I had this at home, but I leave it here because I use it more here. But this morning, after we ate our scoop snacks, somebody in the morning class was like, "Chef, let me take that back and wash it." I was like, no water, no soap. Ever.
I did that on my mom's.
All you do is take a spoon and scrape off as much as you can get, and then a paper towel. That's it. That's it. Never. That's why this is so good. So in this, I have, in my little sachet, I have some allspice, some cloves, some peppercorns, a cinnamon stick, a little bit of a bay leaf, because I like bay.
Kind of need cinnamon.
Do what?
Kind of need a cinnamon. That leaves the cinnamon out.
Yeah. Are you allergic?
What is it, Christmas?
Yeah, this is, I'm not, I mean, this is
It's not
not,
gonna cook long, so it's not like it's
So you have black pepper.
I want to try it.
I have black pepper.
I love that as well.
Are y'all watching or?
We're watching. We're watching.
I hear a lot of. Okay, so I'm just gonna tuck that down in here, and then what do I do? What kind of liquid? I think that's a good idea. Right in there is my chicken stock. White stock. Right in there in a pitcher. Right, so, okay, great that you brought that up. Chicken stock in the freezer. A couple of ice cubes in here, right? With your chicken stock would be awesome. So you don't even have to thaw the chicken stock out. Just drop it in here in the ice cubes. Absolutely. Crunch the whole ice tray in here. And this is a braise. So how far up am I going?
Halfway.
Half to I'm gonna say three quarters down to a third. Or 2/3, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna say right about there. So that's a braise. Alright, so I'm gonna let that go until it's beautifully tender. So let me tell you what I'm gonna do because you're gonna be prepping and I'm gonna finish this. So what I'm gonna do is right now, I'm gonna cover this up and let it braise. Very important. When it's done, the cabbage is tender, I'm gonna take this lid off. I'm gonna add some red wine vinegar. Your recipe calls for red wine or cider. I want you to use red wine because it'll contribute to the color of the red cabbage. So I'm going to add a little red wine vinegar, and then I'm going to crank up the heat and let that liquid reduce until it gets kind of syrupy. Okay, I'm also going to add, right now, a little bit of red wine.
A little bit more.
Trust me, cabbage. So I'm going to crank this up to high so that I burn off some of the alcohol. And then at the end, when I get to the end, I'm going to taste it. And if I think it needs something more, I can always add more sugar. I can always add more vinegar. I can always add more wine. I haven't salted anything because I have salt from the bacon, right? So I haven't salted anything yet. The other thing I might choose to finish it with, if it needs a little bit of depth and a little bit of sweetness, I might pour a little bit of port wine. Because port wine is a fortified wine and it adds just a little bit of sweetness plus kind of a depth. So I may add a little of that. I don't know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I kind of, you know, I just sort of make this as I feel it happen.
How long does it usually take to cook the
I'm gonna cook this for about an hour.
So it's not gonna.
Or at least 45 minutes. What?
You're not gonna cover it.
I am gonna cover it, but right now I'm waiting for it to. I'm bringing it up to a boil. But then, in order for this to be a true braise, I have to cover it. I have to. Okay.
How long you gonna let it braise?
I'm gonna let it braise for about 45 minutes. Right. So while that's coming up, what I'm going to do for my next trick is I'm going to make our brine for our pork. And a brine, what I want to tell you about a brine is that it is basically a very